Hello, everyone, and welcome to Free Thought Blog's Conscience, FtBCon3. It is 3 p.m. CST, January 24th, and we are about to start the Secular Student Alliance's Student Advocacy panel. I will be taking questions in the chat room, the Pharyngular chat room, at tinyurl.com/FtBCon. And I will be delivering them to Dan and Cara via chat interface. They're basically going to be taking it from here. I'm going to turn off my camera and let you guys go.
Hi everyone, I'm Cara Zelaya. I'm the Southeast Regional Campus Organizer for Secular Student Alliance. This is Dan.
Hi, and I'm Dan Pemberton. I'm the Southwest Regional Campus Organizer for the Secular Student Alliance.
So you guys are going to all have to bear with us a little bit because I'm going to be sort of running the presentation that we've assembled, so you may not be seeing my face that much, and you'll be hearing my voice, but I promise it's not a ghost, just me handling the technology, because technology is great when it works. So just one second. Alright, so now we have this cool Inception thing going on. Cool. So we have strategies for student advocacy on campus and beyond. Why should you get involved in campus advocacy? Dan, I'm going to let you go ahead and run with this right now.
Well, students are becoming very important in politics because our population is getting bigger. That means we have a lot more young people, and the power that young people have with not only with their awareness and understanding of how technology and how the world today works, but there's really just enormous potential for the power and expanse that young people can have in the world of politics. But also specifically students are affected by a number of issues that range from both the federal and state level down to county, local, and even their school level. That can be policy on student loans, access to healthcare and contraception, various forms of social issues in the world of social justice, and even the separation of church and state that they can be active in advocating for.
So we have a couple of scenarios that we're going to specifically run through, and of course, since we are the Secular Student Alliance and we're representing them right now, we are going to focus a little bit on things that are more kind of campus-based advocacy that can be done, but we also have two case studies that are kind of outside the sphere of just secular involvement. So we're going to run through things like prayer at graduation ceremonies. These are scenarios that happen very constantly throughout college campuses throughout the nation. We have anti-climate change displays that happen in quads. We have Brother Jed and similar campus preachers. And then trying to get contraceptives in the student health center is a problem that students sometimes have with allowing their administration to let them do. And then we're going to be using two case studies specifically, and that's the Knit a Brick campaign and also the Troy Davis campaign. And we especially want to highlight and put the importance of how we're not really trying to say with these case studies that these were particularly successful in terms of, for example, Troy Davis, obviously, but in terms of being a strong source of advocacy and in continuing the conversation, that's really where our focus lies in this conversation. So, oops, what happened? So yes, the flow, how to go ahead and actually start putting any kind of advocacy in motion. Phase 1 is to have a goal, phase 2, and then phase 3, profit. So what's phase 2? And so we have created this sort of activist toolkit, which will go through specific specifically every single one of these bullet points. This is more just sort of like a table of contents to let you guys know where we're going. Lobbying is very important. Letter writing, petitions, collaborative partnerships, social media presence, media relations, demonstrations and rallies, and legal action. So what do they all have in common, all these activist toolkits? For one thing, they're all used to create action. So they're action takers. So letter writing is really interesting and really effective, and it's kind of become this very lost art, but there's still something about having a physical, like, something physical written arrive at whoever you're trying to lobby that has this incredible effect still to date. The letter writing campaign, I mean, I think we've all seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and at the end they roll out all these letters. And there's something about the weight of that. So it's also important to use letter writing as a way to introduce yourself and make a first wave contact with whoever you're trying to get some kind of change from. Tell the person you're writing to why you're reaching out, and this can be such an effective act of diplomacy. So be sure to be respectful and to treat it as such. Letter writing also holds everybody accountable by creating this digital paper trail as well as a real physical paper trail. And you can begin the conversation. Remember to ask people for their preferred communication, because people don't like surprises and want to be respected in general. So even if you don't necessarily agree with whoever you're writing to, it's still important to be respectful and to abide by their wishes as best as you can. So we talk about Knit a Brick, and for those who don't know, Knit a Brick was done as a way to protest the Hobby Lobby decision. And what basically was the plan was to have people shop at different craft stores and to knit bricks as a way to kind of use a play on words there and to create a physical wall out of these bricks that then they would use to protest with. So the organization acquired hundreds of bricks from across the country and from around the world, as they received dozens per day by the mail, and anyone could mail one in. This is kind of a new way of doing letter writing, where you actually had a physical artifact that was proof of people's dismay with the system. Dan, I don't know if you want to go into lobbying?
Yes, lobbying is probably my favorite part of the advocacy campaign process, because lobbying is a really, really great way to put a face to the cause. It is a great way to engage small groups or even individuals in a very unique way that really plays on the conversation, plays on the audience, and it sends the message that you and your cause are worth their time. This isn't a mass email. This isn't a single rally or demonstration that is trying to get the attention of anyone just passing by. This is a specific, targeted meeting and conversation that respects the other person in the discussion. It also is a really, really great way to exercise the skills of diplomacy and discourse. It is a really great way to also use multiple forms of communication. When you are there in person, you not only get to use words, verbal language, there's also the physical language, the presentation. There's also this kind of this dirty little secret that diplomacy actually works, and it's unexpected, because it's really easy to get loud and boisterous and upset when someone is really disillusioned with the system or wants to make change, but really may not have kind of all their hands in the toolbox yet. But lobbying, one-on-one meetings, whether it's with administrators or other public officials, really does work. Oh, and this. If you want to know more about lobbying, please read Amanda Knieve's book, The Citizen Lobbyist. This is shameless promotion, but it is a wonderful book. It is a short read, and it is so exceptionally clear. It's a book that really, I think, synthesizes and crystallizes all of the secrets and mysteries and kind of unknowns about what lobbying is. If even at this moment, you're hearing the word lobbying and you think it's that thing that people are angry at on the news, well, read that book and I guarantee you it will all become much, much clearer and why it is a rather neutral force. It can be used for the better or use your powers for evil, but nonetheless, lobbying does work.
Petitions. This is actually something that I have some experience with. So, hello? I feel like the sound just went out. Oh, no, we're fine. Okay. So petitions is something I have a lot of experience with, actually working in different forms of advocacy. And petitions are great because they create sort of a buzz for your cause. They work symbiotically with social media, especially nowadays. There's so many online petitions, and they're good for building your email and your texting lists. Because usually there's some kind of contact information involved with petitions. It's so helpful when lobbying. And when you say you have supporters, you don't just know it, you own it. You have these real people who you can contact, who you can raise calls to action to, who will be a part of your cause and work alongside that. So petitions matter because the context matters. The people who are involved matter. I've known that when I volunteered with Equality Florida, which is an LGBT basically fighting for the advancement of equal rights for LGBT people in the state of Florida. During Pride parades and Pride weekend, we would go out and we would collect petitions and people's contact information, because that way, whenever we needed a protest or a call to action to anyone, we didn't just have stacks of paper saying people were on our side, but we had people we could call from the information that we'd gotten on those petitions who would also physically show up and be on our side. So it's vital and so important. And again, it's becoming kind of this lost art of the petition, but it still has huge strength. And there's a lot of great places to basically make a petition or to find petitions. There's change.org, there's iPetitions, there's causes.com. AVAAZ, I don't know how to pronounce that, Avaz, I don't know, and then lifepetitions.org.
Hey, Cara, I think we lost your PowerPoint in there because the websites you were just reading off, we're not able to see them on the screen.
Oh. Hello?
We can hear you, we just can't see your screen. We can see you, though.
Oh, well, that's good, but not what I wanted. All right. Am I screen sharing it? Nope.
No, but I'll tell you what. Oh, something's happening. I think you got it.
All good? All right, so yeah, these are the
Yep.
petitions. Change.org, iPetitions, screen capture this, take this, memorize it. There's also a little bit.ly link right there. This is all you, Dan?
Yeah, with the Troy Davis case, I'd like to talk a little bit about this before I get into what role the petitions played in this. For those of you who either don't know or can remember Troy Davis in the back of your brain, it's kind of ringing a bell. Troy Davis was an inmate who was on death row in Georgia, and in 1991 he was convicted of killing a police officer. However, over time it was made pretty clear that the entire case against him relied entirely on very flimsy evidence and witness testimony that contained several inconsistencies. And after appeals, after much closer scrutiny, it was very clear that the evidence against him not only was very unsubstantiated, but it actually pointed very, very potentially to someone else who was guilty, and most definitely not Troy Davis. However, the final appeals really, really were not going well in his favor. And that's where both the ACLU, Amnesty International, and several other human rights and civil rights organizations took up the cause to advocate for clemency. And that's where this campaign comes in from Amnesty International that I looked at very closely. And although this is a case that has parallels to many, many other capital punishment cases and other human rights situations. I chose this one to talk about in an advocacy campaign context, specifically because its objectives were some of the clearest I had ever seen, and its action items that we'll talk about in a little bit were also very clear and had many levels that I think were illustrate many of our points really well. Now the petitions petitions were used to collect signatures. The Amnesty International and USA collected in total for signatures over 650,000. And the petitions themselves, I don't really ever consider petitions to stand on their own two legs by themselves. They can be used to fuel future steps. They are really, really great sound bites, and they work really well in bullet points to support furthering a particular campaign or furthering cause, or even expanding or broadening a base and getting attention from other supporters and other action takers. And it helps send the message that the campaign is worth the time and support of anyone who catches this and takes even a moment's interest in this. It is a really good way of making that person who sees a single post on Facebook or a single post on Twitter from just scrolling through it. It gives them pause, it gives them a reason to stop and think about it.
So I want to talk about collaborative partnerships, and we as a secular student alliance work a lot with different partners from different fields of not just secular work, but basically any kind of social justice. Anyone who's willing to be an ally, we do a lot of collaborative partnerships with. And the reason is it increases the size of the table, and it just makes the more voices that are heard, the more that your message will be heard in general. And so it's a reliable base of supporters. If you tap into an audience that would have been otherwise unreachable. So let's say that you're talking about trying to get contraceptives on your campus, and you are a secular student group. It would be wise to reach out to the LGBT groups, to reach out to the women's groups on campus, and to have just a bigger group of allies to go ahead and lobby whoever is responsible for making the decisions, and you're much more likely to have success in that way. Hello?
Okay, I think you're back.
Okay. So, yes, having a large group of partners is vital. And we need to show that unlikely partnerships, too, create a lot of buzz. So if you want to have an event at your school and you want to do a community service project, for example, and you are the secular group, it's incredibly smart to go ahead and ally with Crusade for Christ or Hillel or whatever the religious group on campus is, because these unlikely partnerships are much more likely to have you get press, to have you just get more of a story out within the community. So Knit a Brick was an incredible example of collaborative partnerships. So it was originally started by the Secular Coalition of America, and which is funny because Knit a Brick, I mean, definitely has a lot to do with religious issues, obviously, but the Hobby Lobby decision also affects women's health in general. So yes, the Secular Coalition of America started this, and its allies were secular groups, they were women's groups, and they tapped into this very, like, cool crafting kind of people who knit group, and I thought that was great that they managed to tie in all of this together, no pun intended. But yeah, not all the bricks are, one of the quotes from them being, from the campaign is that not all the bricks are coming from atheists and humanists. Austin Cooper, the coalition's director of operations, said members of the traditional Catholic traditional Catholic family are so committed to secularism, they made 19 bricks last weekend and gave them to her to bring to the office. So it was kind of a really great bonding experience, and they really capitalized on the collaborative partnerships. And I read some of the letters, they posted them online, that were sent along with the bricks that were knit. And it was great because it was all people who were like, oh, you know, like I'm personally very religious, but I do think that women's health comes first, and that being able to be healthy and to express yourself and to not have the church interfere with our state functions and with our livelihood is vital. Here is a brick that I knit. So it was very cool and a very effective use of collaborative partnerships. Yeah?
And in the In the Troy Davis case, the collaborative partnerships were absolutely paramount to the ground that was covered in the clemency campaign, in really any success that came from the campaign was a direct result of collaborative partnerships. And that doesn't, I don't think that speaks ill for a moment of any one single organization that was involved with that by themselves, but there is tremendous power in numbers. The end result is going to be bigger than the sum of its parts, to say the least. The campaign, or the angle that I've been studying this from, the sort of the side of the story I'm telling this from, it's from the perspective of Amnesty International and their collaboration with the NAACP, and I have another one here, MoveOn.org, as well as several other smaller behind-the-scenes civil rights and human rights groups. But it also was a huge marriage of both organizations and many individuals that were not necessarily a part of a larger group. For example, celebrities that were able to use a much larger, let's say, Twitter base or their followers on other social network sites to bring attention to this. They were also paramount to this. Demonstrators at rallies that were brought in from other organizations as well that we're hearing about this from all over, and also just tweeters in general, who we're going to see in a little bit when we talk about social media, the role that played.
So that does bring us into social media. So there are basically two main outlets right now. There are definitely other social medias that are starting to really blossom, especially blogging websites or microblogging websites, things like Tumblr. YouTube, of course, is becoming huge. But still, the two main ones are Twitter and Facebook. Now, Twitter's great because it is GPS-based, which I think is really important and great. I know that I get an irresponsible amount of news from Twitter when the news aren't reporting something that's happening locally right now. I can just kind of put my GPS function on and find out what's going on. And Twitter just reaches a broad audience, and it's so simple. I know that millennials get constantly mocked about the 140-character situation, that the way Twitter is run, but it does force you to have a succinct, clear message that gets across right away, which is a great and completely valuable skill. It's very easy to network. You can talk to basically anyone through Twitter, and you can talk to the decision makers. If you have a decent Twitter following, the decision makers almost have to respond to you. They're forced to, at the very least. And the great thing too is that multiple people can run one account. I'm sure people who've worked in organizations before know this, but it just makes being able to really, especially live tweet what's going on if you're having an event or a demonstration. I think that if you look at what's happening or what's been happening in Ferguson recently, that's a really good example of how we've been getting a lot of information through Twitter. And yeah, hashtags. Hashtags are a great way to have people from all over the world really be talking about one specific message, and you can click on the hashtag and find out what exactly the conversation is regarding that. And if the hashtag is good, it can get trending, which will get even more attention. Facebook also has an absolutely massive user base. I know that before it was very strictly like a friends thing, but I think we find more and more that we use Facebook as a huge networking tool, and it's more interactive than Twitter, and it also, you're held more responsible because it's a lot less anonymous than Twitter. But because of that, it also has much more value because you can't hide who is saying what. And you can connect with other social networks, so if you do have a blog that doesn't have a particular lot of following, or if you want to give people the option of learning more, Facebook is fantastic for that, and you manage the organization pages from your personal account, so everything is linked, everything is centralized, everything is in one place.
For the Troy Davis, the social media was really quite interesting. That was really, I think, a story in and of itself, with how this information was spread, or even how supporters were gained simply from social media. And although Facebook played a sizable role in this, I think the real star in this was Twitter, with without a doubt. It was key to communicating action items. Now, we haven't talked a whole lot about this yet, but action items are fundamentally the objectives of your advocacy campaign. It is one thing to say that that the Amnesty International wanted Troy Davis exonerated. They wanted him off death row. However, that may be the super objective, but there are penultimate objectives in between now and reaching that goal. And those action items just started with one, retweeting doubt messages. I don't know how clear this is going to be on the right, but those are a series of tweets that brought up really flimsy aspects of the case against Troy Davis. And that gave followers the ability to retweet them. Now, that is really great. That helps bring awareness. But awareness in and of itself is not going to kind of connect the dots between here and the final objective, the end of the line. The second action item that could be easily communicated on Twitter was sign the petition. It's easy to link to that. I believe this one was from change.org, although I'm probably going to hear about it later on, and it wasn't. And then that's the second line of action items. And anyone who takes these become action takers. But the third one was to attend the rally in Atlanta. And between these three action items, the Amnesty International really felt that they could kind of tackle the different aspects of the advocacy campaign from a lot of different sides, where they could now kind of create a life of its own within this, where if all of a sudden, if for 1 hour, one day, one or two key players in this just weren't tweeting or weren't involved, the size of the involvement on social media was big enough where it was just going to keep going, keep snowballing into something bigger. But then here's where the other parts of the Advocates Toolkit come in. The collaboration with the NAACP to regularly retweet the doubts during clemency hearings was now feeding back into this, where anytime there was new information or the petitions got sizably bigger, this now became the single fastest way to communicate this. This may seem really easy and something we take for granted in 2015, but this was several years ago. This was something where the power of a specific social media site was still being realized. And the fact that now the 24-hour news cycle was still an important asset, but was still second to now the 140 characters. And then celebrities as well as other tweeters were able to share this in an instant. And the last slide we talked about how Facebook interacts really well with other social media sites. Twitter can feed right into Facebook, and right after that, Facebook feeds into Instagram, several others, and pretty soon with a single post, people were seeing that across multiple platforms in under a minute. It was one of the single biggest advocacy campaigns to this day, or at this moment, ever brought to Twitter.
So media relations, super important. Publicity. You cannot have an effective advocacy campaign without being very public and getting a lot of publicity about it. Having good media relations, that's how you set the narrative, and that's how you get very initial media coverage. So press release, we actually stress press releases so much over at the Secular Student Alliance. We have a lot of resources about it, and it's a formal news tip that's emailed, faxed, and sometimes mailed to newsrooms. My best friend is actually a journalist, and when I told her that we were working on press release resources, she was so excited because she writes kind of in a small town, and a press release really is something that journalists thirst for. And if there's a story, even if there's just a semblance of a story, they will jump to it because they want to write, and they want to write good stories. So yeah, and anyone can really write a press release. Don't be intimidated by it. If you have any kind of basic writing skills, a press release is very, very simple to put out. And we have a resource, secularstudents.org/media relations, and you can learn all about it there. And if it is secular related, and whether you're an individual or part of a secular student group, if you're scared, we actually have someone who is willing to work with you one-on-one about press releases. So don't worry about that, but do try and get that out. It should read like a short newspaper article. It contains a headline, contact information, summary paragraph, and some direct quotations from the people involved in your story. You can even kind of write it in third person. I mean, you should write it in third person, but I mean, you could quote yourself as being a part of this group. So it all works out really well. And it shouldn't be longer than 450 words. People just want to get a gist of what your story actually is, so that way they can themselves expand on it. So yes, it's so important. The press release is so vital. How can people know about, how can the press know about what you're doing if you don't tell them? You have to tell them so that they can know to chase the story.
In the Troy Davis case, media relations were fundamentally what helped keep the advocacy campaign on track. Because by itself, if, let's say, only social media is used, many of us can think of specific situations, and usually different situations, where one company, organization, person, news outlet, or what have you, wanted to start a hashtag, and then it was quickly hijacked and used against them. The media relations in the press release set the narrative. That means if someone else tries to redefine, hijack, or take away some of the inertia from the advocates, the press releases have already been sent out. In fact, the press releases are usually one of the earlier stages of any type of advocacy or any type of media relations. Specifically in this case, the different organizations, Amnesty International, had a very aggressive push for press outreach. They hit up every medium that was realistically going to work for them. And even the ones that were rather neutral, they didn't want those to be a liability later on. Newspapers via press releases, all of the 24-hour news channels, even the blogosphere, and they got many people in interviews all over the internet, TV, radio. It was one of the reasons that it became such a presence kind of in America, was the fact that it was everywhere, and it was because specifically of media relations that it was everywhere.
Excuse me. So demonstrations, we touched on this a little earlier when we were talking about petitions and about how important it is to actually have physical bodies representing you and your cause and what you're fighting for. So a demonstration, though, doesn't have to be a huge rally in and of itself. It can include something as simple as tabling. It can include something as simple as one person holding a sign next to a campus preacher saying, "No, you don't deserve hate, you deserve love." So it includes tabling and rallies of any size, big or small. And demonstrations get attention because there is a human face behind it. There is someone there. Energizes supporters. It causes a lot of in-person networking. If people see you fighting for a cause, people know that you stand for something. And people who are like-minded are very likely to come up and talk to you and want to join your cause, or at the very least support you and give you words of support. You can distribute printed literature, and you can make signs which communicate messages to photographers. Signs are so important. If you are making a sign for a demonstration, please don't do it with a pencil and an 8x10 piece of paper. Get a Sharpie, get some construction paper. It's really inexpensive and really easy to do, and it does make all the difference. Try to be as professional as possible when you're doing any form of demonstration. And it's a symbol of the inertia that the campaign is taking. But yeah, I mean, if you look at any of the big civil rights movements, or really any of the movements of the last, forever, really, it's always a demonstration that you really think of, or even something that you see as a turning point, or something that started a conversation about a hard topic. So Knit a Brick, I think, is great as being an example of a demonstration because it was this group who had physical evidence of people, and there was people marching them. So even though, if you see here, the demonstration itself wasn't a lot of people, every single brick symbolized a human person who agreed with this organization and who disagreed with the Hobby Lobby decision. And it was very, very powerful. Also the symbol that they use, look at their signs, they're red, it's bright, they have their hashtag there so you can join in the conversation wherever you are in the world. And they have a wall, which is such a strong symbol in general. And it's just such a great, great, great demonstration. We can learn a lot from it.
Yeah, and in the Troy Davis situation, the rallies were a really, really good photo op. The rallies tended to take place. Well, the largest rally was in Atlanta. It was outside the clemency hearings when the date of execution was coming much, much closer, within 7 to 10 days. And the collaborative partners helped make the turnout much, much larger. And the media relations set the narrative when the press arrived, because one of the biggest liabilities in an advocacy campaign of any kind, whether it is a much larger, well-planned one, whether it's grassroots, whether it is almost entirely ad hoc and improvised, it is the demonstrations. People do crazy things when they are in a mob. It doesn't mean that people who are organizing and planning the demonstrations are the ones doing this by any means. But one of the ways to help control the narrative is the media relations, is the press releases. Because when the press arrive, when the police arrive, if your story is more powerful than whatever they're going to come up with, you ultimately are going to win that battle, no matter what happens after that.
So the other side of demonstrations is that they usually are only symbolic, and so less can really be more. Like I mentioned earlier, just having it look professional and using very good symbols within your demonstration is so vital, which is why signs are so great. But you may be very well-meaning, but the crowd itself will send the message. So it's important to, especially when we talk about things that have such heightened expectations and such heightened need to be talked about, there's a lot of energy that can sometimes be good or bad. So it's important to maintain your message on point and to maintain professionalism throughout. So demonstrations too, I think it depends on what it is, but if you do a very large scale demonstration, there is a level of risk involved, so perhaps only use them when necessary. But as far as campus groups go, and this we've said before, tabling and demonstrations, tabling is a form of demonstrations. You can do it, and it may not seem as necessary, but it's so beneficial and so important. And people can't find you unless they see that there's another person on the other side. So please be sure to make yourself be professional, make yourself be easy to greet, easy to talk to, and you'll have much larger chance of success. So legal action. This is one of the things that I'm most passionate about. I have a very high opinion of lawyers, which I know isn't particularly popular, but they are really the people who can enact a lot of change on the most important level, which is kind of legal, because without a legal level, we don't have societal change. So yeah, you can contact us at the Secular Student Alliance, secularstudents.org/legal help, and if you are dealing with something at your school, we can help you. We can get you someone who can give you advice. Freedom from Religion Foundation, this is what they do, and they're great at it. So ffrf.org/legal/report, and they will definitely help you out. You are not alone, and you always seek out legal action. If you feel like, even just if the thought passes through your head like, oh, I might need a lawyer for this, you do. So just seek one out. The FIRE is also great, www.fire.org. Please reach out, get legal help. So in review, make action items and create action takers. And I know we talked about Knit-a-Brick, and we talked about the Troy Davis thing where we were talking literally about someone's life in the case of Troy Davis, but also about a societal problem that people see with the way we incarcerate people and the death penalty. And then with Hobby Lobby, we were talking about not only religion, but also women's health. So I know that this seems like very high stakes. Maybe this isn't something that you feel you should get involved with, but like we said earlier, it can be anything from trying to get contraceptives at your school's hospital to trying to make an LGBT safe zone. everything from small scale to large scale, it's the same process. So make sure you make action items and create action takers. Remember, letter writing, lobbying, petitions, collaborative partnerships, media relations, social media, demonstrations, legal help. That's, if you go through all of those, if you try to go through all of those, and you don't necessarily need all of them. Like if you saw, we were kind of alternating back and forth because there were some times when Knit-a-Brick didn't, do some of these things, and sometimes I think Troy Davis though pretty much did everything. But it's these kinds of toolkits really, if something doesn't work, try something else. Or if it doesn't work, try it in more numbers. I really love to stress collaborative partnerships, especially on campuses. Your local progressive groups will be the best help you can really get. And use what you need to succeed and cut the rest, like we said. And diplomacy works. People still think diplomacy is dead, especially in the age of politics that we live now. We think that collaboration doesn't exist, but it does. It's alive and well. And if you have to be the bigger person to get the success that you want, that's what you have to do. And that's just the reality of the matter. But diplomacy does work. Be patient and try everything out. And I think that's what we have. I know that Dan and I'm going to stop sharing and come back out. Excuse me.
So, Cara, I have a question here that came in while we were presenting. And I'd like to throw it at you.
Sure.
I'm
very dark right now. Hold on. Go ahead.
Student organizations are generally a North American phenomenon, owing largely to the fact that for the most part, outside of North America, there's no campus living. Does the Secular Student Alliance have any tips for bringing together students in places where student living isn't the norm? Or students living together isn't the norm?
Absolutely. I mean, as a Secular Student Alliance, we work a lot with community college groups, and these aren't students who live together typically. They're usually students who live around each other, but not necessarily like together dorm style situation. I'm sorry, my light kind of died. But I mean, I think that, I've worked with community college groups, and some of the best groups that I've worked with are community college based. Also, I think that if you don't have this like living together situation, you definitely still have the power of the internet. So it's one of those things where it's like you don't need to physically be together to create change. I know that, for example, I keep using Ferguson, but it is a really good example of how people are collaborating even when they're not there. People are still raising awareness about that by just being distant from it and using social media to raise the stakes. So writing is really important for this. You can still gather people together, and in things like Tumblr and Twitter. Twitter specifically for GPS location. You can find people within your area who you can collaborate with. And then on Tumblr, you can reach a vast audience by using a hashtag there too, and writing more longer length. So I would say that group organizing is definitely possible, even if you don't live close together. But when it comes to bigger societal change things, I think you almost kind of benefit from living online, It's like, I don't know, I think maybe it would have been like Mark Zuckerberg, or maybe I saw this in like The Social Network, but it's just sort of like, we don't live in cities anymore, we live on the internet. And I always really use that when it comes to organizing. I don't know, Dan, what do you think? You work with community colleges too?
I do, and the internet is basically a very interesting supplement, and I think a whole new sort of ingredient component in the world of finding community. And I think that's one of the really big kind of magical experiences of the internet, is that no matter what you are looking for, no matter what you are inquiring about, you are going to find someone else on the internet who not only has the same questions, the same ideas, or is seeking after the same things you are. They're out there talking about it. And that's so if students aren't physically living together, the internet is definitely the very first place to go. But I would also say that even where there is student living, the internet is the bread and butter of that. I mean, every single person watching this can think of a time in the last week where they walked into a room and everyone was on their phones, or they were commenting on the same Facebook post even though they're under the same roof. And that's and that's really why I think in any situation, the internet is now becoming first and foremost the key component to our lives, regardless of our proximity to each other.
And I think a lot can be said too about, or if you're willing, just like using your face because of the internet. Like I said, Facebook kind of carries a lot more weight because there is a face behind it, rather than Twitter sometimes, and also you can do longer length stuff. But if you are brave and you are comfortable in front of a camera, like vlogging on YouTube is huge now. I mean, they just had a like famous YouTubers just interviewed like the president. I think it was like 2 days ago about the State of the Union, and that was like an hour-long segment that ran on YouTube. And I mean, Dan and I know all about organizing on the internet because he's in California, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. The main headquarters of Secular Student Alliance is in Columbus, Ohio, and we work. That's how we work. That's how we organize. And we'll get together like once or twice a year, and it really won't be that different organizing as it is when we're just sitting in front of our computers, much like we're doing right now. So it's definitely possible. Most large nonprofits that I know of do organizing work remotely as well. So it's very, very common, and it's a lot easier than you think. And this is like, we're not sponsored by Google or anything, but Google Drive and Google Hangouts and just the entire Google brand for organizing is like an organizer's dream. Dan and I made this PowerPoint collaboratively on Google Drive. That's just how it's done now. And I'm pretty sure that the even younger than me generation understands this on the better level. I imagine that group projects are now done on Drive. That's my assumption. And so, yeah, I understand that the whole North American living together phenomenon is very different, but it's not so much. I mean, I have very good friends in Australia who I've done social justice work with as well, so it's all very possible. Hello?
Yeah, that you pretty much covered everything I could think of. Just maybe one very last interjection with that is that I don't think that, but bring this back to the original question, I don't think that even the success of the internet is with bringing people together over long distances is happening even because they live far apart. I think it is also having, in some capacity, the now becoming a substitute or getting in the way even of students living together, because there are so many students now that are having success in education because of online schools, where living together with other students is not a reality no matter where you live in the world. And it's because of the internet that on the one hand it some people might find it a little depressing that we're not living together anymore, but as the viewer said, that it is a rather North American phenomenon, but it's also something that makes options and potential for people to find or brings options and potential to people to find other people that they can correspond with about things that they really want to. I hear this every single week where there are young people, high school students, college students, that do not have people in their immediate community where they can openly express questions or inquiries about whether it's their parents' religion, whether it's about things that they were never exposed to as children. And because of the internet now, pretty much all these ideas, for better or for worse, are fair game.
Well, if you guys are pretty much ready to wrap up, we still have a little bit of time left. There are no further questions in the chat room at the moment, but that's okay. This YouTube video will be available pretty much immediately as soon as I close it up. I'll send it to you folks, and feel free to send it around.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks for participating. It was a very important and informative panel. Cheers.
All right.